All right, this is our final week when we learn how to fix things. So we'll look at the PDSA cycle and some data characteristics. And actually, there's a whole semester's class devoted to this particular topic. Um, this will give you just a brief introduction so you can build on these skills at the workplace, read more about them, and participate and lead projects as time goes on. So first of all, remember how data fits into nursing practice. So today we're going to take the data, the information, and try to make some sense of it, look at it in context, and make a change based on culture. So keep that in mind. So here's where we get data. And a word about protected data. So always check with your organization, and rules vary by state. Vendors don't always know the rules, so just be careful, where your organization stands. So some data is protected by HIPAA, some is protected by peer review and health services evaluation, depending on state and federal law. So patient complaints and incident reports, apart from the facts, are protected, as is peer review, service line data, and quality improvement data, but check with your organization. Proprietary data, some data is proprietary to different companies. For example, the Just Culture algorithm by Outcome Ingenuity is beautiful, but it costs $25 and they won't let you use it without a license. And finally, there's some other confidential protections. Some are informal, some are attorney-client privilege. So just check to see what your organization allows. A good model for improvement is a PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, where you plan your action, you do a small test, and then you study it, and then act, and you make modifications. And this is a great tool that anybody can use. You can use your IHI initiatives. You can use it in daily life. It doesn't take a ton of resources to figure this one out, and it's widely used. There's other models of improvement, Lean, Six Sigma. Reliability is actually more of a measure, but Lean and Six Sigma take tons of resources. So PDSA works for smaller projects, but you may be a part of a Lean and Six Sigma team, and I'd encourage you to at least experience it once so you know how it works, and you might even want to get certified in that area. So today we're just going to look at some basic things, but before we start, some points for consideration. Data have no meaning apart from their context. So if you have a number 5 just sitting out there without context, it's just a number 5. Think about your method of analysis, people will ask. And sometimes you have to look at the data and play around with it before you come up with your method. All data contains noise. Some data contains signals, and that's what we're digging for. What can we glean from this info? We're looking for insight. A trend is a relatively rare event. So you can star this and think about it in practice, because many people will think, okay, you put an intervention in place to decrease, let's say, pressure ulcers in the next month. By gosh, they go down, and people say, oh, that's successful. That's not a trend, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A second or third measurement will probably be different than the first or second, and you'll see that over time. There's some basic terms. All processes display variation, so think about this. Some processes display natural variation or common cause. It's just kind of the stable day-to-day activity. If you map processes, other processes display uncontrolled variation or special cause. So if you were tracking PPE usage for the past, 3 years, you would see a dramatic spike in March around PPE. That would be a special cause variation. And you may see that in other areas, but mostly what you'll see is common cause variation. So if you don't understand this, you can see trends where there's no trends. and that's important. Some months the data may be up or down for whatever reason. You're likely to explain variation as special events, and it's not. Um, Sometimes if you initiate a process and go down, people say good job or bad job, but it's really beyond that person's control. It's the system. Without understanding variation, you can't understand past performance or make predictions or make process improvements as well. So think about that when you're looking at data. Also, tabular data is challenging. Bar graphs don't tell you a ton from year to year. There are some exceptions. Look at arbitrary targets, so just don't set something just because in general. And then one of the best tools of performance improvement to chart something over time is a run chart. It's simple, easy to do on Excel, and you can make some conclusions based on that. Denominators are a challenge. So common denominators, you'll see patient days, patient visits, RVUs, which is a physician measure, adjusted patient days. RVUs actually are nurse practitioner units too. And basically this normalizes this data. So if you have, a teeny unit that, has an event that may be looked at in a different light based on normalizing the patient days. However, for never events, there shouldn't be any anyway, so it really doesn't matter for a volume, I don't think. There's challenging denominators. They're all challenging. Meds, how do you know the doses were dispensed and administered? It could be in somebody's pocket. Some basic medications go outside pharmacy. Hand washing, almost everything. So you really have to define your denominator, and people may challenge it, and it's helpful to have people agree on what the denominator is because they won't be perfect. This data example, if you take a look at it, shows no, this doesn't show anything. You think, oh boy, it's going up or it's worse. These 3 points don't mean anything. You need 5 to 7 points above or below the mean or the median to have a trend. Same thing here. Is this a trend? 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, it isn't. So people may get all excited or upset depending on what you're looking at based on this chart. In fact, it shows nothing, and you'll be surprised at the number of people who do that. So collect the right data, look at time, look at noise, look at that special cause, and then look at the actions for processes. So here's an example of a run chart. Let's say this is a fall. This actually might be out of your assignment. You did an intervention in July. And then, by golly, August, September, October, they're all below the median. This is a trend. So a key to run charts, you need 5 to 7 points above or below the median to have a trend. Any less than that may tell you the process you're tracking is heading a certain direction, but it's not a trend. So this indicates whatever intervention I put in place is actually working if it is designed to lower falls, and you can use it. Maybe another initiative would be above the median for compliance activities and things like that. But keep this in mind. This is key. Also look at this little caption here. This is typical, what you'll see, and see your organization for guidance. This is a Pareto chart, and this can help you focus your improvement activity. So it doesn't show data over time. And remember, bar charts don't show data over time. But what this shows, and this is fabricated data, but typically what happens out of the literature. So we're looking at causes of abdominal retained foreign objects, and there's an N of 10. And here are the categories. The idea is you go across the axis, you go to where 80% in the line interact, you go down. Everything to the left are things that you can address um, and focus your improvement activities. This is a good chart to show every time you're in an improvement activity, there's somebody in the crowd that wants to focus on something that happens the least. Maybe it's their favorite project, maybe they came from a different organization, but this is a good way of saying, you know what, we do see this here, but let's focus on these other more numerous areas first. And actually, Pareto charts are in Excel now and super easy to do. You can see tutorials around it. Once you figure out what your action is, make sure it's effective. And this is from the RCA squared MPSF document. So here's some stronger actions, and they jive with things that we've looked at before, like forcing functions. So usability testing, engineering, simplifying processes, standardization. Here's some intermediate actions, checklists or an intermediate action. And you can see that. And then finally, weaker actions are double check warnings, training. So remember, human factors, forcing function is a better action, but not always possible. Actually, 5 rights fit under weaker action because it's vigilance. Think about your change management framework as you build your measure. You know, is there urgency or is it just a pet project? Can you build that vision? Can you get people to buy in, including the leaders and so on and so forth? And how do you make it stick? So think about this as you're devising your measure. When you're looking at a measure, one thing you have to consider is the cost. So cost is usually a determining factor of most everything. Otherwise, we would have fixed things like staffing or access to healthcare and the change management model. So is a unit willing to fund extra time to pull data from charts, or is the organization willing to put into place special equipment, maybe beds to prevent pressure ulcers and so on. So you have to consider those things operationally and figure out how you're going to implement it. Once you choose your action, you have to figure out a way to measure it. So the measure must include what you're measuring, how you're going to measure it, who's going to measure it, and how long you're going to measure it. So in the CMS guidelines we saw from Vanderbilt, this is what they'll respond to. And you have to be careful because you don't want to measure everything forever if things are going well. So you might say, measure it until the process reaches 95%, then measure quarterly or something like that. So you have to be clear about what you're going to do. So here's an example. As a part of pressure ulcer reduction, you want to ensure skin, let's see, you looked at it and the skin assessments on admission are missing. So you want to make sure that they're in the medical record. So the charge nurse is going to review all patient records within 2 hours of admission. He or she is responsible for documentation, monitor documentation, and the unit manager is responsible for the process. This could be a part of a bigger measure that includes education of staff, but this is nailing down who's going to do it for how long and how you're going to measure it. And that's the presentation for today. So I've enjoyed being with you all semester. I hope you've have found the course interesting. And it's my hope that you as students can actually fix some of the things that we know exist and better than we have thus far. So I look forward to hearing all your achievements, always looking forward to keeping in touch and feedback for this particular class as well. Best wishes to you for a healthy, happy, and safe career.